Welcome back to the Life on Target podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Spearing, bringing you my interview today with Joel Salatin, who needs no introduction in the homesteading food freedom community. I met Joel at the Rogue Food Conference and had the opportunity to spend a couple hours driving in the car with him. And so I took out a microphone and recorded one of our conversations for the benefit of you, the listener. So that explains why the audio is a little bit less polished than our normal interviews. Also, this intro and outro are being recorded in my barn because of technical difficulties in the studio. But Joel's wisdom and understanding and mindset to approach this day and age and how to build anti-fragile communities and channel our energy towards things that provide hope to others will make up for the audio quality, I am sure. So without further ado, my interview with the one and only Joel Salatin.
So we're on our way to church, and
We're actually in the church on the way to meet.
yeah, heck yeah, yeah. There you go. You're already challenging my way of things. But I guess when you made those comments yesterday at Road Food about just what really freedom looks like, and you're kind of were talking about individually how you can be free. But as I see the way that the world is going, I feel like this is definitely one of those times where we start to set aside excess like Joseph did. And then in times of crisis, we're able to help people because we thought ahead, and you talked about building the ark and getting to the ark yesterday. And if people aren't wanting to go to the ark, then it's not on us. But I guess what I would say, like, I have a church that's 250 people. We're in a county of 90,000-ish people. How, like, mechanics wise, we have about 100 kids under the age of 14 or 14 and under.
Wow.
So, and
That's a youth group.
yeah. And our church is young, but I guess as the men of the church are looking and seeing what is going on now, like, just if you had 250 people, some of us own land, some of us don't, like, how do you see that kind of economy setting? Like, how do we set goals? What do we focus on? How do we distribute work? In more of a corporate, like you also were saying, or wasn't you that said it, but somebody was saying, pick your neighbors. It was Tom Massey.
Yeah, Tom Massey.
So
yeah, put that on your checklist.
So I guess that's what I would just say is, like, how practically specific, even how are we talking to our kids about it and building kind of that multi-generational thing that will last.
Yeah. So I think the place to start on a whatever discussion of a question is attitudinally. And what we've got right now, if any of us who are actually looking and thinking about where the culture is going, if I said, pull out a piece of paper and make a list of all the things that you're frustrated about, worried about, angry about, we can all make that list. Attitudinally, though, we need to take that list and take all of that energy, that angst, that worry, that energy focused on that. And instead of being outwardly angry, we need to be instead taking that energy and applying it to innovation, creativity, and a heart that when everything becomes hopeless and helpless, we offer hope and help to our communities and our world. And so how do we become that shining light? How do we become that hope and help, when the wheels fall? And so um, I'm thinking of things that you need to thrive in down times. So one of the first things you need is a place to stay. You need a roof over your head. We're not deer and bear. We don't we can't snuggle in under a cavity tree and be fine. Uh, so you need housing, and so that means that if somebody is so um, whether it's repairing, remodeling, building from scratch, whatever, but when you think about, does everybody have a place to be? Everybody have a warm, safe place. Secondly, you need food. And so, how are we going to, in all this, what I'm talking about is an arc or a parallel universe, that provides, stability when things are grossly unstable. And so food, of course, is a big. So, what can the gathering, what can the fellowship, the ecclesia, to facilitate food within the group? I don't mean Costco memberships. I mean to disentangle from Tyson, Cargill, Putin's war in Ukraine. I mean, now it goes across the board, and to disentangle from COVID regulations, vaccine requirements, all the things that are disturbing the ship of state. What's happened is that with instability that we have right now, the largest outfits are the most vulnerable to these rocky distortions. If you're in rocky shoals, you want to be in a speedboat, not an aircraft carrier. You want to be in something that you can turn around on a dime, not turn around in 10 miles. And so, what we're seeing now is that the newfound fragility in the large scale food complex can be ameliorated by local sourcing, backyard gardens, and a truly viable regional food system. Doesn't mean you're not going to have coffee. But if wheels fall off, you might not have coffee. You might not have bananas. And so, what are you growing? Strawberries instead? Are you growing, blackberries, apples, pears? Things that can be grown, fruits to give you that fruit part of your diet. That doesn't depend on, for example, oranges, bananas shipped in from, tropic. So food becomes, a pretty big issue. And then expertise becomes a big issue. So rather than depending on Angie's list or, whatever for expertise to do wiring or plumbing or fix your, brakes on your car, or whatever, a directory of the fellowship's expertise. Who knows how to do these different things, including, IT, website. I mean, all these things, so that we begin circulating. One of the secrets of the Amish community is that every dollar generated in an Amish community circulates. It gets spent 7 times before it leaves the Amish community. That's one of the secrets to their wealth. So when an Amish person sells $100 worth of stuff, it circulates to $700 before it finally exits that Amish community. And I think that this is something that in the non-Amish faith community, we need to be mindful of. How can we either save money by bartering? One, maybe one household, they put in a great big kitchen, and the fellowship invests in some significantly upsized cannery stuff. Where instead of just being a home size, you could can 40 quarts of stuff at a time. One of the beauties of canning is vacuum sealed. If the power goes out, you still got food. The problem with freezers is power goes out, you got no food because everything thaws and spoils. And so there is a real uptick right now in interest and knowledge about canning things, as well as freeze dried. That's another technology that we have that can extend food life out, 7, 8 years. Yeah, you can go and buy stuff from these prepper outfits that you can buy their 5-year package, but it's a lot better and more nutritionally superior to grow it yourself, be involved with it yourself, and I think spiritually to be a participant in your own sustenance. We can't become spiritual giants on the back of somebody else's Bible study, and we can't become unstable people without without participating in our own nutrition. So food preservation. Maybe somebody's got a great hill, and they can put in the root cellar, and it won't be a root cellar just the size for their family. Everybody goes together. The construction people go together, and you have a root cellar the size of a tractor trailer, for example. That people can store. So there's individuality, but then there's also community involved. There's a balance between those two. So you use each other's expertise and special abilities to leverage not only expertise but natural resource. Water, of course, is a big issue. So who has the well, and help everybody have a nice big cistern, gutter your roofs. This is where the construction guys can come in. Everybody gutters their roof, puts in a gray water return system, so nobody's putting potable water in their toilet. Instead, you're using dishwater and bath water. You're using that in your toilet. You've just cut your water consumption by 50%. If you're on city water, you just cut your bill by 50%. And then if you put in a cistern from your roof gutter, chances are you go to a gray water system. Now you can just disconnect from the city's water system. There's sewer systems using algae, like a big radiator with PVC pipe, and you grow algae in it. And you can drink the water coming out the bottom end, and you grow algae that's a 50% protein substitute for grains and lentils and beans and whatever. I'm going on, but the number of things that you can do that are very practical to disentangle from your dependency on I'll just say on the broad way and embrace the narrow way. All these things are unorthodox, but most of them are very low tech. They're doable, and so you just embrace in the field of housing, energy, and food. You embrace those stable, practical ways to live outside the system.
Well, what are the, obviously there's a spectrum of people. You could fill a room with 100 people.
Sure.
Everybody's going to end up kind of various places. Yeah. And I feel like I'm definitely at that point where I feel frantic at age 39 to kind of be like, okay, how, it's been 5 or 6 years on this journey. Like, obviously when you start, the earlier you start, the incremental, the compounding benefit of it happens. And even with health and everything for your children, but how do you, I know you spoke about this and we both feel the same frustration that you talked about, pigness of a pig, where you have so many of the things that, the green movement, the hippie movement, that
the
they treat
movement.
Yeah, they treat it's obviously there's political aspect to it that is, but the way they treat the earth and the way they view things is putting Christians to shame in a lot of ways. And even in our own body, you're, doing the potluck thing and look at what's on the table.
Yeah.
It's not healthy.
No.
It's poisonous. And then,
Yeah.
we got styrofoam and we got all
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
so what for a missionary that thinks this way within the church,
Yeah.
how are you bringing people along in your circles graciously and some to kind of get everybody on the same page and to, I know, buy them all your books and,
Uh-huh.
and make them read them.
Yeah.
But
I think, there've actually been Sunday school, adult Sunday school groups that use Marvelous Pigments of Pigs as a, not to replace the Bible, but as a discussion group thing. I think it starts with the leadership to be able to have these discussions. I mean, yes, you're right. The average church, the average group, if you go in, I try not to use the word church because it sounds like cathedral. So I'm not trying to.
yes.
The actual word means gathering. So just imagine if every place there was church in the New Testament, instead you heard gathering. We might not build such big edifices and might be more interested in doing some of these practical things. But we have to create a safe, and I think this is, again, we're back to attitude. We have to create a safe place for discussions to happen. I mean, problem is if I go in to the average faith group and say, instead of having styrofoam, why don't we use paper plates? Or better yet, let's go down to the Salvation Army and buy a bunch of, secondhand plates and we'll wash them at the end. And there's nothing in the trash bag. First thing an elder or deacon said, are you some sort of, tree hugger, nurse muffin, pinko commie? I mean, that you can't even have a discussion, about it or, and so I'll tell you a story. Stories are powerful. So, the second time I spoke at University of Berkeley University of California, Berkeley, which, as you know, is hotbed of
Christian activity.
I mean, that is absolutely, it's the most woke place in the whole country, maybe. All right. So anyway, so I'm there and I've got, 250 people in this room. And I do my dog and pony show. My creation, yeah, that's not my thrust is, of course, sustainable agriculture, but in the context, I'm talking about sanctity of life. I'm talking about, creation, the creator, God, look, I mean, it's not an evangelistic service, but that's my language. Okay. And, I got done and I mean, all these kids that were standing, they were literally, sitting. I'm sure the fire marshal would have had a fit. I'm sure we were twice as many people in the room. They were literally sitting cross-legged. I was stuck in a little 3x3 spot where they were sitting up around me, really, really close. This was, one of Michael Pollan's classes. And so anyway, they were keyed up. And anyway, I got done, standing ovation. It went nuts. So, we get done and the two professors that had me bring me out, we're going to have ice cream at the end. They know I'm addicted to ice cream. That's my one foible. I want that. All right. So
the pastor has that vice as well.
Okay, is that vice as well? Okay. All right. Well, if you're going to pick your vices, that's not a bad way to go.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we go out and as soon as we get outside, it's dark now and they pivot, stop me there in front of a light post and say, we've got a confession to make. I mean, oh, this is kind of different,
Mm-hmm.
I said, but what's the deal? They said, we were scared to death for you. I said, really? I said, why? I said, because between the two of them, they'd been there for 30 years or some such thing. They were tenure. And, during the Vietnam era, if you remember the Vietnam revolts developed at Berkeley. And at that time, they developed a hissing. When a speaker would come to campus that the students disagreed with, they would hiss them, like, and they perfected this hissing. It still goes on today, there at the campus. I mean, we're talking about very, very courteous, cordial, diplomatic students here. And, so anyway, these two professors said, in all of our years here, we've never had one single speaker use the word God reverently. Now, if you want to swear, that's fine. Okay. But we've never had a speaker in his speech, used God reverently without being hissed until tonight. And it just, my lights went off and it struck me. Wow, this is what the faith community has been missing. We were supposed to, why did that happen? It happened because, and I'm not trying to set myself up on a pedestal. I'm just explaining the argument here. What I realized was that for the first time in their life, perhaps, most of these students heard a true believer, a true Christian speak who was wrestling with consistency, really wrestling with consistency. Now, I'm not consistent. All of us have our hypocrisies. We all have our, okay. But the students appreciated that I was wrestling with what does it, I'm not just saying God, I'm saying, so what does he want me to do with the water? What does he want me to do with the soil? What does he want me to do with my body's nutrition? And to wrestle with that, like Jacob wrestled, with the angel and said, bless me, Lord, why can't we wrestle? Why can't we wrestle to find, Lord, what would you have me to do? And in a practical sense, not just theology, not just another, academic focus group on loving your neighbor. No, what's that actually mean? Does that mean you have a Tyson chicken house and pollute the stream with excrement and stink up the neighborhood so nobody can have a Sunday afternoon barbecue? Is that loving your neighbor? That kind of thing. And the students responded to that, and it just struck me the amount of penetration, equity that the faith community has squandered by making fun of anybody who dares to question, maybe we should treat the forest different. Maybe we should eat differently. Maybe we should raise chickens differently. And I know that when I met with had an interesting thing happen. I met with the vice presidents at Chick-fil-A. I've never been to a Chick-fil-A. I don't eat that kind of chicken. But plenty of Christians have been to Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
And,
people have gone so far to say as though that's God's chicken.
Yeah, that's right. And let me tell you, it ain't God's chicken. Now, that doesn't mean that the people that the Cathys that own the business are bad people, evil people, any more than, Bo Pilgrim of Pilgrim's Pride Poultry. He hands out gospel tracts in bathrooms at airports. All right. Bless his heart. All right. But you cannot imagine when I travel, and of course, I spend a lot of time in non-Christian places. Okay. And I can assure you, in their mind, going to a pro-life rally and stopping at Chick-fil-A on the way home is as hypocritical. They view that as hypocritical as we view wanting to rip out babies from the womb and then running a Save the Whale campaign or Save the Tree. We're looking at that. What? You want to save the tree and the baby whale, but you don't care about a baby human? We're like, what, how do you even address that? Well, they view with the same level of intensity our hypocrisy when we say we actually believe in the sanctity of life and then eat Chick-fil-A chicken. That's the same level. And I don't think the average Christian has thought about that. That has not entered their mind. Anyway, I was down in Atlanta doing a conference, and there was a mid-level manager at Chick-fil-A who was a fan. So she orchestrated a meeting between 3 of the direct report VPs at Chick-fil-A and me to meet. And they came reluctantly because they liked her. She was a rising star in the company. And we'll go, to
satisfy
to satisfy you. And so they came pretty reluctantly. And we went to this nice swanky restaurant, they paid. And
nice.
It was their treat. And anyway, they it was a little bit tense, I mean, there's a little bit of this, kind of shadow boxing going on, and you're getting acquainted a little bit. And they gradually warmed up. They realized that, I mean, they came thinking that I was probably a fraud. How can a guy say things like, let's make sure the chicken expresses its chickenness and be a Christian, that sounds like animal worship. It sounds like, PETA. And so, they realized that I was true blue, and they warmed up a little bit. Anyway, the dam burst in the discussion when I looked at those three guys and I said, let me ask you a question. Does God care? Does God care what chicken you serve? Does God care how that chicken is raised? And at that moment, the whole discussion cascaded differently. They just stopped. They never thought of it before. They had thought about, how can we treat our workers well? How can we create a pleasant atmosphere? How can we be God's light in a community? They thought all this wonderful stuff.
Downstream from where the chicken showed up at the back bay.
Exactly. And bless their hearts, they do a lot of things right as a business. I mean, closed on Sunday. I mean, who would ever guess that?
Yep.
But they had never asked, does God care where our chicken comes? Make a long story short, the evening progressed very rapidly after that. A month after I get home, they fly up in the corporate jet to spend the day with me and find out how we raise chickens.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked, how, and so we had them to dinner, of course, in the house. Teresa fixed pasture chicken for them.
Mm-hmm.
They were just true blue, delightful guys. They were just great. And so toward the end, they said, so how do we get your chicken at Chick-fil-A? So I gave them a roadmap. It's, here's a way to do it. And so they went home and they spent a year working on this. And finally, after a year, they just said, it's too hard. We can't do it. And the bugaboo, here's the funny thing. And they're not the first ones where this has been the final bugaboo. The bugaboo was, I mean, obviously, we can't supply all Chick-fil-A's chicken in a day. You got to grow into it. So I encourage them to either start with the one close to us that we can supply and then expand it to others, or better yet, offer two kinds of chicken. You could get this or the pasture, and that was the bugaboo. They said that absolutely. What do you call the other? Factory chicken? I call it fecal chicken, but what do you call the other? And that was the bugaboo. They could not get.
They didn't want to compare status quo with the best.
Yeah, but you don't despise a Ford, a Ford Taurus that's on the same lot as a the Navigator, right? They're two different things for two different markets, two different kinds of people. We don't have any problem differentiating quality in clothes, entertainment, automobiles,
But we want to flatten it.
But food is supposed to be, undifferentiated, homogeneous, and all the same. And part of that is simply, our cheap food policy, our industrial thinking, all that sort of thing. But anyway, so I asked the guys, I said, just imagine, remember back several years ago, you might have been deployed at the time, but when the marriage, the homosexual marriage came up, and Dan Cathy said, at Chick-fil-A said that it's going to be marriage as a man and a woman.
Yeah.
And, there was these huge boycotts all around the country. But the faith community responded tremendously and went to Chick-fil-A. And I mean, these guys told me, they just laughed. They said, and that was the best marketing campaign in our business's history. What was that? I mean,
standing for the truth. Imagine that.
Yeah. So I said, just imagine if a month later he had said, not only do we believe that a marriage is between a man and a woman, we believe that a chicken should be able to be respected enough as a creation being to be respected enough to have the life of a chicken. And so we're going to start a policy of, whatever, pastured, non-factory, non-chemical, blah, blah, blah. I said, what you talk about driving the liberals crazy. What in the world would they have done with that? And that would have truly leveraged that,
They would have gone, two worlds would have had to collide at that point.
Absolutely. They would have had societal penetration at that point, like they've never seen before. And I'm not saying this to diss Chick-fil-A, but I'm using it as an example. I think everybody could see from a logic presenting the gospel, presenting the claims of biblical truth on a culture. It's obvious to see, it's obvious to see what could have been done, and what the faith community could do. And so we should be the ones who are poo-pooing compost piles. We should be the ones saying, this is so fearfully and wonderfully made. There's no way that you can concoct a 10-10-10 chemical fertilizer and think that you can replace the magnificent decomposition of a billion microbes per tablespoon in the soil in a compost pile. We should be the ones presenting to the world this fearfully and wonderfully made is beyond our. But no, instead, it's the creation worshipers who have taken that high stewardship ground, and the creator worshipers have had this other. I was up at the University of Guelph in Ontario doing a presentation, and it was a town hall style, and the guy and so there was three of us that had a 5-minute opening little monologue, and then there was going to be Q&A for 2 hours. And the guy next to me sat down, and he had a Bible. Well, that never happened. What? I thought, this is weird.
They got an ally on the panel.
Yeah. Okay. So he first, I'm second, and then there's a lady that's the third. There's three of them. And so he gets up, he holds his Bible aloft, and for his whole 5-minute opening monologue, he rants to these students that every gully, every destroyed riparian area, every, sterile frog, every eagle egg that won't hatch. I mean, it's because of this book. It's because of this book.
Twists.
Yeah. And that just kept, he just kept that refrain. He'd go for, 30 seconds, this book, 30 seconds, this book. I follow him. I'm sitting there thinking, okay. I mean, I had prepared. I thought I knew what I was going to say. Whoa, this is, this can't stand. And so, I simply stood up. My first response was, what he just said is all a misinterpretation, misapplication of that book. And actually that book takes great umbrage at all of the environmental devastation that he just talked about. It talks about, when the Israelites went into the land of Canaan, don't cut the apple tree. It talks about the care of the ox and that God knows when a sparrow falls. Anyway, that's not what the Bible says. Unfortunately, the background of the environmental movement has been very anti-biblical. Bish, Sheets, Kelly, the romantic moments. You ever seen anything as, lovely as a tree and blah, blah, blah. And so the modern environmental movement grew out of a non-biblical, a creation worship mentality. And so the Christian community rebel against that and threw out the baby with the bathwater and said, well, we want nothing to do with this whole deal. And, we all know it's going to burn anyway. So what does God care about the earth if it's going to burn anyway? And so the whole stewardship thing got co-opted by creation worshipers instead of creator worshipers who promoted actual stewardship as a form of worship to our creator who owns it all. And, I would simply ask, a business person, if you owned all this and this were and you had made all this and it was beautiful, how would you like it to have 700 dead zone riparian areas in the U.S.? How would you like it if half of our topsoil washed away? How would you like it? Where's your return on investment? And I would suggest that God's got a pretty poor return on investment as we desertify and destroy the soil and destroy our own nutrition and bring on lifestyle diseases. Yeah, the U.S. invented the McDonald's hamburger and glyphosate, and we now lead the world in all of the debilitating diseases. It's fun to be number one with the basketball team, the football team, the soccer team, number one in the military, right here. We like to be number one in places. The U.S. is now number one in the world in chronic morbidity of non-infectious disease, which are primarily lifestyle diseases. And so, it's hard for me I confess, it's hard for me to be empathetic and sympathetic when somebody comes to church. Pray, I've got my type 2 diabetes and they're trying to get this stuff. And you go home and look at the refrigerator, it's full of Velveeta cheese, Hot Pockets, Lunchables, and Coca-Cola.
And they're on antidepressants.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess obviously the change doesn't happen fast, but even in some ways I feel like, where I am with the men that I taught, men should be able to handle the truth.
Yes.
And we should be able to compete in the ideas. So if men are able to be in a room and we're able to go look each other right in the eye and say, this is messed up,
right,
and we need to change it, then it starts with just a couple guys doing that and leading in their families,
right,
and then generationally, like my kids are going to have a completely different optic on animals than I did. And it's not a fault of my parents or anything, but the fact that they're running around with chickens all day long,
right,
and the roosters are named and they're catching them, and they're seeing the full cycle.
Yeah.
It's food and of life and of, hatching chickens out and then, butchering them and eating but I guess now I would just say is, how do we got 110 kids. What are we putting in front of them, and how are we that? Not only we have any that are in public school, we have probably a 70-30 split, 70% homeschool, 30% private Christian, a classical kind of school.
Yeah.
But what are we saying? I've heard people make the distinction between education and schooling.
Yeah.
But then, you've talked about expertise and skills that you can use. What is that focus, for our kids? We had a great discussion about making a business for them too, so.
Yeah. Well, I think that, that having some sort of understanding of visceral activities, where you know how to grow something, fix something, or build something, kind of those three general areas, grow it, fix it, build it. Almost everybody should have some practical understanding of some of those things. And, there are numerous great writers who have dealt with, it's the generalist who actually wins in the long run, not the specialist, because the specialist knows more and more about less and less, whereas the generalist has a broader base in which to make decisions and which to operate. And, you might even militarily, you might even think about this as situational awareness. The more situations you can be placed in, um, the broader, the more visceral situations you can be placed in, the more your discernment muscles and your decision muscles are exercised. And the first thing we need to do is have these kids never play a computer game. I mean, it's just wasted time. That time, the average American male now between 25 and 35, this is the actual number. The average American male now between 25 and 35, which is arguably the most virile time of a male's life, spends now 20 hours a week playing video games. The average. So think about what that 20 hours a week could mean invested in something else, from reading a book to planting a garden to, learning some woodworking skills, something. And, being mentored in some sort of practical stuff. Digging a cistern in your backyard. I mean, when I was in college, one of the summers I was home, my summers were, June was haymaking, July was major project, and then August was getting the firewood so mom and dad would have wood to heat the house. When I was in college, that was the way my summers went. And one of my July projects was I built a 10-foot by 30-foot hole 6 feet deep on the end of our house to put in a solarium on the south side of the house and to protect the foundation of the house. And I dug it by hand, wheeled it out with a wheelbarrow. Think about this hole now. This hole was 30 feet by 10 feet by 6 feet deep. I dug it with a pick and shovel by hand. Okay. If you just peck away at a project, it's amazing what you can get done if you just persevere and peck away at it. And so I think that there can be a lot of things, very practical things done, to secure your house, not just solar panels, but, maybe solar panels. Maybe I was just in South Africa and I spent the day 2 days on a farm with a guy who's built a gasification unit. You put wood in it and it runs a generator. That way you have power anytime you want it, and as much as you want. You're not dependent on the wind or the sun. And it was wonderful. And the whole unit was, the size of a big wheelbarrow. And so there are so many things that we can do, but when the faith community pursues the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, like everybody else, so that we have generally the same goals: earn a lot of money, get wealth, that sort of thing.
Good job, good college.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's the lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. When that is the ultimate focus, we're not going to put any attention on some of this mundane, what appears to be mundane stuff of stabilizing our life situation.
And I think that's creativity that has been squandered.
Yes, absolutely. Well, think about the big, Bill Gothard's Basic Youth Conflicts, Patrick Henry College. I mean, you could just go down the line, Pensacola Christian College. I'm a graduate of Bob Jones University. Think about the faith community academic circles and the people who are trying to funnel youth into what are considered societal influencers. Okay, nobody Nobody is talking about disentangling from the basic dependencies, enslavements that we have to the power grid, to the, to the bank, to the Angie's List for fixing things. It's all, how do you get on as a legislative aid? How do you,
Yeah. What's the path to congressman? Fastest path.
Yeah, exactly. And I suggest that the city set on a hill is the way to go. And that city set on a hill starts with the most foundational aspects of life.
Well, that's a pretty good way to end as we pull into the parking lot of the building as the church.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Let's go in and gather and see how these people how they do.
How they
I
do.
feel like my accomplishment of the weekend is getting a Bob Jones University graduate in a Presbyterian church.
Oh yeah, and realize that I've spoken at Yale, Harvard, Berkeley. I don't know how many Bob Jones graduates have had invitations to those places. So I consider myself a bit of a bridge, have the privilege of going some places where most Christians don't get invited. So that's a real privilege and an honor.
Well, thanks for being on the record for the drive.
And remember, Bob Jones had 56 denominations on campus.
Wow.
56 denominations. I call them abominations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As always, thank you for listening to the Life on Target podcast. I hope that discussion with the legendary Joel Salatin made the lack of audio quality bearable as Eli and I record this outro in the barn to get it scheduled and released to you on time. Please don't forget to share this conversation with a friend if you found it valuable in any way. And if you want to see the video of this, I will be putting it on YouTube, hopefully within the next 24 to 48 hours, maybe not exactly when the episode drops on the podcast channels, as I am still editing all of these podcast episodes myself and with Eli's help. So anyway, share with a friend, give us a rating or review, and as always, have a good one.